listening to Wolf Spirit Radio and Haggy Shack Radio with Barbara Threecrow in Beyond Reality. And you are live.
Oh, thank you. I kind of figured. Hi, everyone. This is Barbara Threecrow, live with Beyond Reality. Yes, happy to be here today, and welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, wherever you are on this beautiful mothership. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I've been reading the last couple of weeks here from George Lobono's book, Alien Mind, The Thought and Behavior of Extraterrestrials, and I'm going to continue with that. There's so much in here, in this book. So, yeah, today's June 3rd already. Here we are in June. I was talking a little bit on the chat before, was asked what's coming up in the garden, and yeah, we're having a huge amount of snapping turtles coming up from our pond, climbing up the hill and coming into the garden to lay their eggs. That's been quite an adventure. These are huge turtles. And yeah, so I had to take one out today because she got in the garden, couldn't get out the fence. So I threw a towel over her head, and she immediately started chomping on the towel. I had gloves on. Well, yeah, I got to wear gloves, and very large. And so I put one hand on either side of her shell and started to lift her up, and she just went crazy, scratching and chomping and scratching. So good thing for the towel and the gloves, and I walked her out of the garden and set her down, facing downhill again. So, yeah, this is what's coming up in the garden, along with spinach and all kinds of wonderful greens and stuff. Our peas have flowers on them, and yeah, it's quite beautiful here now. And a little cool today. We had the rain come in early this morning. And last night was outside on the land with a fire and looking at the stars. So, yeah, it's good. It's beautiful here. And, so I'm going to, continue. So this fella here, George Lobono, has contact with different, ETs, and he's sharing a lot about some of their information, and, how he's talking a lot about electrogravity and how to see electrogravity and locate the aliens, because apparently this is electricity or a wave around them or something, so they vibrate, this electrogravity. But he's talking right now about the verdant. The ET's called the verdant. There's a particular case that illustrates the fact that there are noisome disagreements on an intergalactic scale. Along with others in the human telepathic community, I've interacted and have disputed with verdants, as strange as that may sound to some readers. Disputes arise because, like many humans, I'm actively critical of verdant gray intentions. Now, if you remember, in this reading, talks about the abductions, of course, and a lot of people talk about the gray aliens abducting people, but they're ruled by the verdant peoples or verdant beings. Prior to reading Kraft's book, I had no clearly defined context in which to identify verdants, because verdants normally try to obscure themselves behind lesser dependent aliens of their group, in other words, the Greys, and also gray human hybrids. It's a matter of pride and official priority that they do this. After his book was published, specific details about some of my own ongoing interactions were brought into sharp focus. Although I disagree with aspects of his story, Verdant's remarks about an angelic intermediary for some of their contacts with humans, for instance, a SOP that smacks of Verdant propaganda, he's saying. It is earnest and informative. At present, Verdants can be remotely discerned easily. As noted above, they can be investigated using techniques described in later chapters, so we will get to that. The Verdant story is outlined in a way that brings together important, previously unspecified pieces of a very large puzzle. One coalition of Milky Way and other aliens had issued repeated warnings about the Verdant Grey abduction and breeding scheme, which is described as a violation, an illegal intervention by an oversized abuser here along the fringes of the Virgo supercluster. Verdants are cited for provoking militarization and the infiltrate sabotage of other worlds' ecologies. Before delving into the subject further, I should note that the history of alien political disputes in our small part of the universe is mentioned here for one specific reason. It figures high in the minds of neighboring aliens and is intrinsic to inter-alien relations that humans are just beginning to discern. It is of epical significance to humans, yet may be seen as a kind of garden variety item in larger cosmic news reports. In a larger context, there are much greater considerations. Few aliens would deny that major issues are at stake in our struggle against an intervention that features a breeding program and manipulation of religious and economic conflicts. Now, pay attention to this, because this is what I'm reading now is very much similar to what's happening, what we're aware of now. This intervention that is a manipulation, features a breeding program and manipulation of religious and economic conflicts. Some readers may disagree with the assertion, yet it's based on reports by black budget whistleblowers, abductees, and other contactees, plus aliens who can easily be identified. There is an urgent tone in such messages. In a larger sense, one can imagine an alien in a neighboring galaxy supercluster reading about the situation here, and then wincing because it reminds him or her of a similar situation that they experienced in the past on their planets. By the way, for readers who wonder where we live in the universe, I recommend the following website, and I did pass that on to you, and I suggest you check it out. I will pass it on again in the chat room. It is extraordinary. Okay. Incidentally, talking about the galaxy MR3, matches the size and location that Philip Kraft describes as the Verdant home. So when you look at this site that I will put on the chat afterwards, you will see what I'm talking about. Some humans assume that they've always gone about their business without setting limits on population and wealth. Yet in more basic sense, every family makes such decisions daily. For all humans to do what most of us have done, to forgo a life of material excess and limit one's family, isn't a major stretch of the imagination. Should we continue down our present one-way street toward global ecological breakdown, we can expect the larger alien community to either distance itself from the regimes here or try to convince us to change before we become a threat to our neighbors. People who interact with aliens hear advisories of this sort regularly. A universal standard. After years of experience with different kinds of aliens, we can begin to make distinctions about alien perspectives on psychology. What I'm about to say may make some readers uncomfortable, but I'll say it anyway. The first and foremost distinction of the sort has to do with the difference between sexually reproducing populations and those who reproduce by cloning or other non-sexual means. Every single alien population with whom I've interacted has placed strong, unmistakable emphasis on the difference between sexuals and non-sexuals. The difference between sexual verdants, subdued yet collectively aggressive, territorial, and prone to blackouts of larger perspective, versus typically non-sexual gray aliens is stark. Grays are more dispassionate and consistent in their analysis and are more capable of admitting error. They're humbler and less prone to the stimulus-seeking dimensions of personality disorder. The same is true of other non-sexuals who have interacted with humans. Among alien populations, the sexual versus non-sexual distinction is considered so important, so intrinsic to sorting out complex issues, that a basic non-sexual perspective appears to be the universal standard. Now, why is that? Because a non-sexual lifestyle is more internally consistent, more cool-headed and ecological. Non-sexual reasoning is less slippery, less prone to pleasure-seeking pitfalls and spacious rationalizations, and less distorted by the need to impress others. Non-sexuals can sustain their thinking more prolongedly, and they can develop finer, more detailed kinds of reasoning. Non-sexuals rarely pose a population risk to the larger universal ecology for one simple reason. They can plan and control their numbers in proportion to their needs and resources. Meanwhile, what normally determines the amount of sexual procreation? Impulses, a sense of loneliness, biological urges, and in some cases a lingering fear of external threats, a need for protection, in other words. Sometimes, of course, there's a prescient kind of love for that future little cutie. Love, to a good alien, is a larger, more general kind of social interrelationship. It is a humble search for meaning. In its most intelligent universal form, love is an abiding openness, a truly inspired desire to both feel for and help any and all other beings in ways that resonate with all other minds within safe limits. It deliberately reaches into the most painful depths of suffering to collectively lift the affected toward a more advanced yet transparent kind of understanding. Such aliens accept even sex-positive humans who can see through themselves and behave responsibly. The sexual versus non-sexual theme is recurrent, although subdued, in human alien interactions and has been mentioned in a variety of contexts. Sometimes it frames alien criticisms of human violence and excess, meaning our higher intellect versus animal impulses. Sometimes it frames a discussion of sexual escapism and what to aliens are nearly delusional notions of economic refuge. Sometimes sexual versus non-sexual themes permeate discussions about evolution and advanced social dynamics. Hyper-advanced aliens say that entire planets have suffered ecological death while the sexually predatory elites responsible for such disasters continued their escapades right up until the death of all surface life forms. In some cases, they competed for sexual opportunity even as they retreated to underground refuge. Some aliens have posed the following question. If in the future or after you've died, you could choose to either merge with a more advanced kind of universal consciousness or continue as a human sexual, could you shun the sexual dimension in order to exist as a higher life form? At other times, the sexual-non-sexual theme has been used to underscore the aggressive intervention here by Verdants, who reportedly dominate the lesser, dependent gray alien population. Since the story of the Verdant population provides a useful example of sexual versus non-sexual behavior, we'll discuss it briefly before returning to our main topic. A mega population problem case. Philip Crafts reports that when he visited the Verdant ship, he was told that in the past, Verdants opted for a genetically selective, non-sexual reproductive strategy, but later chose to return to sexuality. A Verdant told him that the reversion to sexuality cost them a significant part of their intellectual ability. If such is the case, then why did they do it? For some strange reason, no single Verdant explained their reasoning. The omission speaks volumes about the larger Verdant outlook. A closer look at the case suggests that Verdants may have done so in order to outnumber a competing population in their home galaxy. Given recent developments in human astronomy plus non-IFSP aliens' comments about Verdant history, we can now construct a scenario for that phase of Verdant history. Those who briefly studied the website showing our location in the universe will certainly appreciate the following. The beautiful star-studded swirl that we call the Milky Way is part of a group of some 40 galaxies in the local group, which features our galaxy at one end and the equally inspiring spirals Andromeda and M33 at the other end. The two Magellanic clouds and numerous smaller elliptical or irregular galaxies complete the picture. Moving counterclockwise as seen from above, the nearest galaxy groups, all similar in size to our group, are Sculptor, Maffei M81, and the Canis 1 group, which billows out into the Virgo supercluster, a relatively modest-sized supercluster as the universe goes. The fifth closest galaxy group is Centaurus A, which may hold the answer to why Greys and other Verdant-related aliens have abducted many humans. If, as Kraft reports, the Verdant home galaxy is 14 million light-years away, then its most likely location in terms of size and habitability would be the large spiral galaxy M83, which is in the Centaurus A group. Now, competing aliens have repeatedly suggested that M83 is the Verdant home galaxy. While interacting with the pre-noted human telepathic community, one advanced alien communicated an explicit map in such regard. Another advanced alien remarked that Verdants have prematurely cooked M83 by overusing electrogravity on a massive scale. He suggested that by doing so, Verdants may have caused certain supernovas in M83 to explode prematurely, thus decimating biological planets. When that last remark was stated, there was a brief exchange between a Verdant and the alleging alien. The alleged allegation stood unchallenged, though. Again, this was observed by a number of different humans. Some may ask whether we should trust such aliens' reports. In response, I should note that some of the alien contingents who visit our vicinity are on serious and in some cases potentially life-threatening watch for other aliens. To even be here in our vicinity, tending to such matters from a distance can be risky. No alien wants to be responsible for a Verdant seizure of their technologies, which Verdants reportedly study and sometimes try to copy. For example, a few years ago, a hyper-advanced alien reported a previous Verdant seizure of a Haven alien craft, the hull of which was made of hybridized living materials that allowed it to reconfigure in cold, empty space. Given that the ecology of our planet and surrounding galaxy groups may be jeopardized by a colonizer's incursion, competing alien sources apparently feel a need to tell the truth about Verdants, now that contacts have begun here on Earth. Some alien contingents are so much more advanced than Verdants that they don't feel threatened. Instead, they seem to tend to Verdants regarding larger ecological alternatives. Should recent reports prove wrong, however, the next most likely candidate for the Verdant galaxy may be NGC 4945, M83's close neighbor. NGC 4945 is a large spiral-like M83. Meanwhile, the galaxy that clearly dominates spiral M83's galaxies group, guess what, is Centaurus A, a much larger elliptical, it's nearly round galaxy. According to astronomers' data, Centaurus A is the product of a merger between two large galaxies that was completed some 10 million years ago, before the present view, that is. Centaurus A is some 12.4 million light years away from Earth. Astronomers say the merger may have begun as much as 500 million years ago. Some suggest that Centaurus A is now a large elliptical galaxy with a dust lane around its perimeter because it absorbed a modest-sized spiral galaxy about the size of our close neighbor galaxy, M33. Let's continue our scenario about the Verdant home galaxy. For the sake of the argument, let's assume that the Verdant galaxy is M83, as has been repeatedly suggested by alien sources. As such, we may now have enough data to posit an explanation for the Verdant's aggressive population growth. According to Philip Kraft's reports, Verdants developed advanced electrogravity, magnetogravity technology some 229 million years ago. Since other advanced populations probably existed near M83 at the time, the Verdants could have copied other aliens' technology, much as humans copied down gray alien technology more recently. Their planet's heavy gravity virtually assured an alien crash early. According to astronomers, M83 has a double nucleus, a double center, which suggests that like our neighbor galaxy Andromeda, M83 has nearly finished merging with a smaller galaxy. Assuming that there were intelligent residents in both merging components, the merger may have spurred Verdants to be more competitive. Verdants may have worried that merging aliens might outpopulate Verdants in M83, and that in turn may be why the Verdants ended their non-sexual status in order to outpopulate competitors. Other pressures may have sped Verdant population growth, numbering 500 trillion at present, beginning as much as 229 million years ago. Verdants may have seen the pending merger of two nearby galaxies as a threat to their domain for one simple reason. Some residents of the soon-to-merge galaxies would have scouted M83 stars for future homes because their soon-to-form large elliptical galaxy would be hot and very dangerous. Beginning as much as 200 million years ago, an incursion into M83 by refugees fleeing the merger would have alarmed the Verdants. Had encroaching aliens taken on occupied systems in M83? Verdants would have wondered whether Verdants would control their own fate or face early depletion of their galaxy due to Bearden's the speeding of time caused by the use of electrogravity. Remember, speeding of time. Just popping in here with my perception. Acting out of fear, Verdants may have been motivated to overpopulate and expand their domain in order to ward off further incursions. Perhaps they saw that Centaurus A refugees might gain footholds in other spirals of the vicinity, the galaxies around them. Refugees fleeing Centaurus A would have had good reason to be afraid. Earth astronomers see two huge cone-shaped remnants of what is called hypernova, extending out from opposite sides of a massive black hole in the center of Centaurus A, which is now a large elliptical round-shaped galaxy. Hypernovas caused by the merger of two star-sized black holes are the most violently explosive events yet observed in our universe. The hypernova that reportedly exploded in Centaurus A more than 10 million years ago probably involved black holes that contained millions of solar masses, so the event was cataclysmic. The central black hole in Centaurus A contains 200 million solar masses. Given that galaxies deform as they merge, causing some stars to plunge toward hot central regions of the new galaxy, the Centaurus A hypernova would have been alarming, and if left unshielded, thousands of potential habitable planets would have been made unlivable. In fact, the Centaurus A hypernova suggests what may happen on a lesser scale during future merger of black holes. M83 is considered an active galaxy because it emits much radio and infrared energy from its central region, perhaps due to its double center. Let's continue the scenario. According to NASA report, issued several years ago, life is probably ubiquitous throughout the universe. Early life forms eventually evolve into higher intelligence in all habitable regions in all habitable galaxies. Given that the vast majority of visible stars are in galaxy superclusters, it's logical to assume that supercluster social forms and limits on overpopulation should, in theory, prevail across our universe. In the same way that New York and the world's major cities figure in comparison to Waco, Texas, for example. Superclusters should be more challenging yet more integrated and urbane than our outlying areas like the Verdant Galaxy Group. Of course, the two cities analogy falls short in illustrating likely differences. Suffice it to say, the Verdants may be an oversized yet relatively backward population, socially, albeit not necessarily technologically. The Verdant ETs are highly intelligent. It's possible that in some respects the Verdants failed to accord with Virgo supercluster ecology because they didn't organize collective accommodation of Centaurus A refugees in their galaxy group. Instead, Verdants may have overbred in order to outnumber competitors. Alternatively, it's possible that Verdants were used to force some accommodation. However, that seems unlikely given the greed and the arrogance we've seen among these Verdants to date. In one scenario based on direct quotes by more advanced hyperversal aliens of our vicinity who say they predate humans by billions of years, the Verdants were greedy, self-rationalizing expansionists. And in late 2004, hyper-advanced hyperversal aliens stated that Verdants embarked on a population blitz due to struggle for control of the original Verdant galaxy. For example, according to Kauf's figures quoted by the Verdants themselves, Verdants take 9.1 planets for themselves for every one occupied by other species. Worse yet, on average, verdants are 90,000 times more numerous than the IFSP's other individual populations, which is a dangerously unbalanced ratio. It appears that a more advanced population decided to steer the verdants outward as part of a strategy of eco-tensions, in part to give eco-offenders reason to moderate, in part to showcase the verdants as an example of a distorted ecology. There have been specific remarks to this effect by more advanced hyperversal aliens. In a critique of verdants, a hyperversal alien said that a verdant-abetting hyperversal alien faction had gone out of its way to find and to identify emerging planets for verdants to target in search of conscripts. Now, after learning of this, I and other humans probed and queried the verdant-abetting hyperversal aliens who monitor verdants very closely. And they eventually admitted that, yes, verdants have, in fact, been steered toward planets like Earth. Now listen to that. So, what did I just say? It appears, listen to this now, it appears that a more advanced population, meaning alien population, decided to steer this verdant ET group outward as part of a strategy of eco-tensions, in part to give eco-offenders reason to moderate, in part to showcase the verdants as an example of a distorted ecology. So, now, and after learning of this author and other humans who connect with these aliens probed and queried the verdant-abetting hyperversal aliens who monitor the verdants closely, and they admitted that verdants have in fact been steered toward planets like Earth. There seems to be a statistical pattern in the given hyperversal alien scheme. They appear to encourage intergalactic interactions, in part to cultivate a better awareness between galaxies, in part to develop a check on offenders like the verdants. As a result, when the people of a planet like Earth do begin to learn about aliens and electrogravity, we quickly get a sense of intergalactic politics, plus the need for a larger universal ecology. So this is what's behind this. Okay. When the people of planet Earth and other planets like Earth begin to learn about aliens and electrogravity, they quickly get a sense of intergalactic politics. There's politics out there, folks. We've got politics here for sure that are pretty wacky, pretty manipulated, pretty controlled, plus the need for a larger universal ecology, and this we do have to look at. Apparently, verdants are also expected to learn by their encounter with humans, a lesson that seems to proceed but one world or galaxy at a time. Suffice it to say, manipulated planet kills can have long-term political and other consequences. In short, there appears to be some validity in both of the verdant expansion scenarios above. Judging by all reports, millions of years ago, verdants decided to outnumber their local competitors. Now, on March 8th, 2007, a hyper-advanced alien said that verdants struggled with two other large populations in the verdant home galaxy. The verdant strategy in the struggle was to expand outward and, at the same time, do genetic infiltration and take over hegemony schemes targeting other populations. Now, in order to do so, the verdants had to develop a large library of genetic and biological trade specimens which proved useful in approaching, copying, infiltrating, and managing various other populations. The same hyper-advanced alien also said they still use the same outward slant. In other words, if that's true, Verdance worked on 2 other megapopulations plus a number of smaller target planets as part of their outward move. So the Verdance have been out there getting involved and infiltrating into other planets as well, populations. Such strategy set the model for Verdance use of direct human operatives here on Earth. As part of an IFSP intervention, in other words, an ancient Verdant dispute with 2 other large populations reportedly bred a crisis regime in Verdant society. Although that crisis should have ended long ago, Verdants continue to expand anyway, perhaps because they find it profitable. By provoking conflicts in order to weaken other societies, Verdants perpetuate their crisis regime and they extend it into places where it probably isn't warranted. This suggests that Verdant IFSP expansion strategy was founded on conflict, excess, and spacious rationalization. Regimes of the sort are rarely democratic, nor do they allow freedom of information. Instead, they tend to be predatory and opportunistic. Fateful ironies would have followed. Overpopulation leads to greater needs, career pressures, resource grabs, and the wayward impulses of those who want to participate in exotic foreign adventures. According to Philip Craft's remarkable journals, Verdants are sexuals prone to territoriality and the sometimes clouded judgment that sexuality engenders. In that respect, as in most others, we see a subtler shading than is noted in humans. Nonetheless, we can assume that some in the Verdant bureaucracy suffer neurotic pitfalls that surround the circus-like manipulation of other off-world peoples. Due to the internal preoccupations of their far-flung government, in times of crisis, Verdant crews will be pressured to conform to a colonial paradigm. As sometimes happens in intellectual subcultures, the sexually related weaknesses of the Verdant elite can be flipped, in a sense, and regarded as positive attributes rather than impulsive failings. Do you think we have any sexually related weaknesses in our elite system here? Just asking. As a result, a typical Verdant may regard humans as minor neophytes from a backward planet and think that Verdants are perfectly right to intervene here on Earth because Verdants are more knowledgeable. After all, Verdants engage in a vastly larger endeavor. Judging by many human reports, Verdant IFSP propaganda says that humans need to be saved from the ravages of our lesser nature before planet Earth is ruined. And I going to read that again. A typical Verdant may regard humans as minor neophytes from a backward planet and think that Verdants are perfectly right to intervene here on Earth because Verdants are more knowledgeable. And after all, Verdants engage in a vastly larger endeavor. Now, judging by many human reports, and we've heard this so many times, Verdant IFSP propaganda says that humans need to be saved from the ravages of our lesser nature before planet Earth is ruined. However, few Verdants will confess that part of the breeding program seeks to infiltrate and gain control over vital human sectors. In Craft's book, Verdants admit having done that to other planets, and competing aliens allege that Verdants are doing it here on Earth as well. So, how do Verdants rationalize their aggressive strategy millions of years after their home galaxy power struggles? Without realizing it, Verdants sometimes communicate their internal assumptions about their qualification to administer others' affairs, along with messages about a culture of fear surrounding their bureaucracy's challenges to any Verdant's competency. Within their vast colonial hierarchy, some challenges are de rigueur because Verdants often supervise younger, less technologically advanced aliens from non-Verdant planets. To stay on top, Verdants must be coldly manipulative, especially during an intervention. In numerous disputes with Verdants, I've noted this pattern repeatedly. For example, when intruded upon personally, or when I note that humans are being violated, I sometimes probe and remotely test an entire Verdant crew for details of their past and present intentions here. This is done in flashlight bursts across a larger configuration space, not in the sense of visible bursts, because it's a hyperdynamic involving the negative cycle outlined in previous pages. So, he's doing a remote viewing. Sometimes in response, lesser crew members try to demonstrate their skill at diverting me from identifying a Verdant overseer or the while resonating in slightly masculinized subcultural terms. Their version of masculinized resonance is less rough-edged and more intelligent than what one might expect among contained craft humans, but it occurs fairly often and has been noted by a number of human observers. Sometimes I encounter non-sexual aliens whose intermediaries verge on masculinized characterizations. For example, there's a hyper-advanced population of larger circulation that has been called the Three Ellipticals faction, which, along with hybrid intermediaries, tends to be Verdant case in a variety of ways. More about the Three Ellipticals subculture and other hyperversal aliens in a following chapter. Now, speaking for myself, having long been identified as critical of Verdant gray intentions here, I've endured thousands of hours of mostly uninvited and passive remote interactions with IFSP-related aliens. However, some of it has been threatening and at times has been tangentially framed in terms of a Verdant connection to one leading U.S. military-industrial family, formerly French monarchists named Biedermann and DuPont, in part known for its ties to organized crime, plus a previous family affinity for fascism. The family has a leading role in what is known as the anti-alien black budget, cabal, ironically, which suggests an attempt to play both sides of the fence off of each other for advantage. Other hyper-advanced aliens have repeatedly pointed out that part of the family, the formerly Swiss branch of Biedermann, was direct Verdant operative, possibly a result of the breeding program. The news caused quite a stir here among the human community because it corroborated a long-running pattern of thinly veiled verbal threats to humans, a strategy of tensions that such aliens have pursued for years to the chagrin of a growing host of humans. As a result, there have been sustained, finely networked efforts to probe the suspects in such regard. The results have been disturbing, frankly. As is reported in following chapters, hyper-advanced non-IFSP aliens who criticize Verdant overkill have repeatedly reported that the IFSP has a number of direct operatives on this planet, Earth, one of whom is reportedly in the Biedermann part of the DuPont family. The largest, perhaps most reactionary arms manufacturer in the United States, with a long history of supporting death squads and underworld finance. Another, perhaps more important reported direct operative is a noted French financier named Rothschild, whose family first appeared on a major scale by funding both Napoleon's adventures and his British opponents. In his latest book, Hidden Truth, Dr. Stephen Greer mentions Rothschild's role in a black-budget cabal that controls alien-related programs in the West. And Greer writes, There are extremely well-connected people who are on the inside of the covert control group that runs U.S. alien-related programs, and who want to see disclosure, but they're terrified of the rogue, violent group. A former head of Army intelligence, a member of that group, had offered me a board seat in '92. Soon, Greer got an invitation from a group of rogue insiders to meet with them in the Wrigley Chewing Gum Mansion in Phoenix. And while there, a man in the control group took Greer out onto the balcony and told him, "You know, we understand you've had this meeting with the CIA director and are providing information to the president," who was Clinton at that time. "But you need to know that those people don't know anything, and they're never going to know anything." Greer declined when the man offered him large sums of cash if Greer would allow them to rein in SETI's efforts. When Greer said he was going to Europe to meet with people connected to the British royal family, the man said, "It just so happens that I'm going to be over there meeting with the Rothschilds and the people who control the Volvo Corporation and some of the other big industrial concerns, because they're working with us." The man said that Max Rabb, a leader of the Rockefeller-dominated Council on Foreign Relations, was working with him, as was Mr. Peterson, the head of the CFR, and Peterson's wife, who headed the Rockefeller-dominated Trilateral Commission. Greer describes the Phoenix Contact Group as the largest mafioso and organized crime enterprise on our planet. A senior science applications internal corporation executive told Dr. Greer that in order to support alien-related projects and black budget programs, there was an army of 8,000 men who did nothing but import drugs under the cover of classified need-to-know programs. He stated that of the 8,000 men involved, as of 1997 when we spoke of this, that 2,000 of them had been killed for sometimes minor infractions of security. At first glance, reports about direct operatives of the IFSP high in the human economy may sound strange, yet, given the IFSP's larger long-term strategy, we should expect to see highly placed direct human operatives. From the Verdant perspective, they would be useful and could help to assure that long-term IFSP mobilizations and abductions for breeding purposes achieve their desired goal. Earth would not be the first case of the sort. One Verdant told Kraft that the Verdant IFSP inserted direct operatives high into the social lineup on at least 2 other planets. Those familiar with U.S. history will recall that the Bush family has long been a willing, if not obedient, part of the DuPont Dulles faction of the CIA, perhaps the most corrupt of factions. Advanced non-IFSP aliens have gone so far as to state that George Bush Sr. is also in some way a direct operative of the IFSP. You guys aren't surprised about what I'm reading here, right? I know you're not. I can just feel you all out there nodding your heads. No, it doesn't sound weird. As weird as that may sound to some readers, okay, well, we'll give you that. To some listeners, the point has been stated repeatedly and with emphasis, so it may be important. This is nothing new to us who are awake here. The subject was later probed by a broad but discrete network of humans with deeply disturbing results, and I'll explain how this is done in later pages. Having done graduate study in U.S. history and having worked as an investigative reporter, I wouldn't report the quotes unless they were A, repeated numerous times so that a variety of humans could pick up on them, and B, were later investigated to check for direct personal indications let slip by Bush Sr. himself. This was done through a careful setup of circumstances that apparently came to his attention, which allowed for such to be teased out. Now, former U.S. intelligence operative and whistleblower Kathy O'Brien reports that at Bohemian Grove, she witnessed Bush Sr. tell Dick Cheney about a plan to spread HIV to get rid of undesirables. Bush reportedly said, "We'll annihilate the niggers at their source, beginning in South and East Africa and Haiti." Now, I want to just say, when this HIV/AIDS started to come out, there were some of us who really picked up the fact that this was a plant. And of course, immediately, and I am one of them, and perhaps some of you also, immediately were, said that, of course, that you're crazy and you're conspiracy theorists and all that. But no, listen to this now, what Bush Sr. said. Okay? Let's spread HIV to get rid of the undesirables. Now we've got Ebola. Now we've got Zika. Pay attention to all these things coming up. All these things that keep hitting us. An alarm, an alert, terrifying new disease, terrifying new something. Here it comes. Where is it coming from? Out of the blue, right? It helps to remember that Bush's father, Prescott, was instrumental in the finance of Fritz Thyssen, who gave Hitler's Nazis their biggest donations from the 1920s onward. In other words, Bush has a racist family background. Bush reportedly spoke glowingly of his teacher, Alan Sides, Ph.D., who used to lecture Bush's prep school class about the virtues of fascism. Kathy O'Brien also reports that while discussing genetic engineering, human cloning, and the ruin of Earth's resources for profit with Bush, Dick Cheney said no one would be able to think to stop technology's plan, and Bush replied, "I'll destroy the planet first." That could be a first-of-a-kind threat against this planet by a reported IFSP direct operative. Think of that. The same advanced aliens also mentioned an IFSP direct operative named Gold, or Gold something, apparently a Jewish financial figure in New York City. Later indications were that it's Goldman, owner of Goldman Sachs. Who do we know on the political scene that's very involved with Goldman Sachs? Well, many of them, but right now. The following persons were also reported to be IFSP's direct operatives: some of the Royal Saud family, some Dutch royals. They co-own Royal Dutch Shell with the Rothschilds, and Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh, and General Hugh Shelton, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs before and during 9/11. If those quotes are correct, it would appear that Verdansk have a multifold strategy for manipulating the human situation at present. Oh, but it's not just present. This has been going on. They may be more ruthless than we might expect. That attitude may be important to remember when we discuss how the Greys' original planet was ruined. Generally speaking, Verdansk appear to have a foreign policy that places their empire of sorts at the center of their consideration, from which other concerns are imagined to radiate outward. Some Verdansk seem to have been spoiled by the luxury at distant travels, the option to live and work on thousands of planets, plus the chance to study and manipulate lesser populations up close. If you were offered all of this, I'm just thinking, think of a type of person, a human being. Now, these aren't humans, these Verdansk, they're aliens. But think of a human being being offered, okay? Think of this, that places their empire of sorts at the center of their consideration, okay? That you would have the luxury of traveling anywhere, distant travels throughout the universe, that you would have an option to live and work on thousands of planets, that you would be given the chance to study and manipulate lesser populations up close, that you would be given sexual adventure and money, anything that you would dream of, would you say no thank you? Would you say, I'm sorry, that's not for me, because I know who will be destroyed. I know that that's wrong. I know that that's evil. Well, there are some that don't have that ability, as we know, to say no. I've detected a subdued but droning kind of lust for sexual adventure among the most coldly dysfunctional old stalwarts. It's possible that some of the worst cases of the sort are sent to work on the most distant, primitive planets targeted for colonization, like Earth, for example. After years of working in such places, some old verdants become almost hopelessly corrupted. Imagine what they go through. First, they must breed an obedient surrogate population to help tend to and mix with the peoples of the target planet. Such projects involve the inculcation of primitive belief systems, delusional constructs prone to schizophrenic pitfalls. Wars are influenced toward an eventually pro-IFSP outcome. IFSP operatives must be positioned to gain influence over organized crime structures on the target planet, which is Earth. Here and others, and breeding program operatives must be placed so that they control the maximum amount of money and resources without being exposed for their loyalty to the verdant colonial scheme. Now, to some readers, this surely may sound strange. Corrupt aliens, for sure. To those who know the history of colonialism, it should come as no surprise. Humans aren't the only kind who can do wrong. And we are talking colonialism. In the end, verdants who tend to colonize targets can themselves be casualties because they become too dangerous to return to more psychologically refined postings somewhere else. Now, some are relegated to relatively barren outposts like a planet that Philip Craft's Verdant contact described, a verdant way station somewhere in the Milky Way. Ultimately, we must ask, how can verdants maintain so large yet isolated a string of planets? How do they prevent the people of such planets from assimilating with their neighbors? Stark differences between crude verdant colonial operatives and other more finely cultured verdant specialists suggest that, like militaristic governments on Earth, verdants have devised a stifled, if not infantile, kind of citizenship. To publish ugly details about their most aggressive foreign policy failures would loosen the cohesion of the larger empire, for instance. So presumably they glaze the cake. In other words, they overwhelm the verdant citizenry with more positive news and scientific reports about their many planets. These are patronizing attitudes of verdant crew members I've encountered who speak volumes in this regard. I've seen verdants who will directly and intrusively impinge on any human regardless of stature. The long-running verdant 3 ellipticals aliens patterns of thinly veiled threats that are noted above. Okay. Which became cause for concern among human officials. Okay. And I am going to finish this at one time. Preemptive impulses of the sort might have helped verdants maintain their independence in the face of a challenge. However, that was during a relatively primitive age compared to the current inter-alien context. In a sense, humans are lucky to have developed under safe circumstances. Now, I'm going to take a short break, and I'll get back to you to continue this very fascinating read, and I'll see you on the other side. In the end, like the human disaster of World War II, galaxy mergers in M83 and Centaurus A would have contributed to a burgeoning verdant security apparatus that ultimately defeated its own original purpose, which was preservation of the long-term ecology. Worse yet, in order to maintain their hold on non-verdant conscript planets, verdants would have to surround such planets with an overbearing trade and techno-defense structure in order to cut them off from neighbors with whom they might otherwise affiliate and then stray. That may be why verdants and greys have reportedly developed limited human hybrid offshoot colonies on several planets near our solar system. Ultimately, to proceed at such effort and expense would be costly and would tempt verdants to mine the vicinity's resources in order to profit by the interaction. Of course, that may be their prime intention. Unlike what happened in the verdant case, better managed galaxy mergers will hasten mixed alien integration and will refine advanced technologies, while placing a limit on population growth. Indeed, some newly merged elliptical galaxies may be exemplary in this regard by reducing their populations in advance, then jointly sharing a merged galaxy. Oh, they can set a higher standard. Hey, listen to this. By reducing their populations in advance, what's the big push that we're talking about here? About the Georgia Guidestones, about the reduced population. Now, this has been put in place in the other systems with these ETs. They've reduced their population in advance, and then they jointly shared a merged galaxy, and then they can set a higher standard. Meanwhile, the coalescence of M83's double nucleus is long past, and the Centaurus A hypernova crisis was sufficient to change the expansionist policy of so large and unwieldy a population. None, of course. The most likely solution would be a collective security arrangement between all of the galaxy groups that surround the verdant home group, an arrangement that should eventually include us, humans. That's a solution. The most likely solution would be a collective security arrangement between all of the galaxy groups that surround the verdant home group, an arrangement that should eventually include us. Further chance for reform of the verdant empire may lie in a coalition of disparate non-verdant planets who try to democratize the verdant-dominated federation from within, even if they are a minority. There are more advanced possibilities, including a largely veiled intervention of hyper-advanced populations who greatly exceed verdants. In my own experience, verdant males have figured in coldly detached manipulations that take advantage of human misconceptions. Meanwhile, verdant females, like human females, seem to be better adjusted than their male counterparts. Oh my gosh, it's even out there in space. Excuse me. Were verdant females to control their government, it would probably be more ecological. I'm not going to remark on that. Nonetheless, in a lighter moment, one hyper-advanced non-IFSP alien remarked that verdant females are characterized by an unusual presence of mind, a tongue-in-cheek criticism of the more immediate stimulus-seeking awareness that sexuality engenders. Like Michael Moore's argument that the United States is really a progressive people waiting to prevail, 64% female and non-white, most of the universe is probably either female or non-sexual, which should help to tilt the scales toward larger, non-violent interactions. We like that, right, ladies? Excuse me, women, men too, I know. The Verdant case underscores the difference between sexuals and non-sexuals. What's happening here on our planet? Okay, just throwing this out to you people. Sexuals and non-sexuals and bisexuals and the other sexuals or non-sexuals that are blooming, coming to the forefront. The problems that can arise among populations who fail to control their growth. Indeed, we now hear competing aliens' critiques of the Verdant stated in precisely such terms. Now, Milky Way aliens should be concerned. The Verdant incursion here is neither a legitimate case of need, nor does it appear to be tightly consistent with supercluster ecology. Instead, it has been cited as a security risk to this galaxy, which brings us back to planet Earth, where abductions still continue. To place the Verdants in context, it helps to remember that Verdants reportedly number 500 trillion individuals in total. Now, in the year 2000, one hyper-advanced alien reported here that the largest single population native to the Milky Way numbers 38 trillion individuals. Are you listening? Do you look up there at the Milky Way sometimes when it's a starry night, no moon out? You look at that Milky Way up there. Isn't it magnificent? Well, there's 38 trillion individuals up there. How arrogant to say that in this galaxies and galaxies and galaxies, one after the other, billions and billions of galaxies, that they're only us. We're the only ones. How arrogant could that be? Assuming such numbers, essentially the only ones that we have to date, the largest reported megapopulation in the Milky Way would occupy some 10 or 13,000 planets. If the Verdant's ratio of aliens per planet holds true here, in addition, we can assume that at least some more advanced hyperversal aliens, part of a universal network of various hyperversals, reside in or near the Milky Way. They may interact with and at least partly constitute every major galaxy's largest coalitions. As such, the Milky Way would more closely approximate a desired universal ecology. Reckless population growth, like that of Verdant's, reportedly 13 times more numerous than the largest Milky Way population, would be destabilizing. Moreover, if Kraft's figures are correct, Verdants take 9.1 planets for themselves for every new member planet that joins them. This is a dangerously skewed and undemocratic ratio. In late May of 2004, one hyper-advanced alien mentioned that a neighboring population of hyperversal aliens referred to herein as the Three Ellipticals faction is either a 1.3 factor as numerous as the Verdants or a 1.3 times 10th times the number of Verdants. It could be less than Verdants. The quote was fleeting, although resonated variously later, that it should be regarded as tenuous at least. Now, judging by the character of the Three Ellipticals hyperversals we've seen, they would probably pose the highest number they can rationalize and might act as though some non-affiliated hyperversals are part of their number. In other words, there may be more to the story. Over time, Verdants could tax the resources of their home galaxy, which may be why they now spill out in search of other galaxies' raw material. And worse yet, Verdants may want to speed the energy clock on other galaxies and shorten their duration rather than deplete the Verdants galaxy's energy lifetime. Philip Kraft quotes one Verdant who said, Verdance have tentatively occupied at least one planet in the Milky Way. He later quoted a human ambassador who says Verdance occupy at least 2 Milky Way planets, which suggests that in part Verdance seek human affiliation in order to rubber stamp their expansionist policy. Human capitulation to such a scheme could put us at odds with native Milky Way and neighboring aliens, if not cut us off altogether. Now, why is that? Well, consider the following. Here it is, our pending merger with Andromeda. According to astronomers, in the not-too-distant future, 3.5 billion years from now, the Milky Way and its sister spiral galaxy, Andromeda, will merge together to form a large elliptical galaxy like Centaurus A. It's possible the merger will result in a massive spiral like the galaxy M101, which was recently discovered to contain 1 trillion solar masses, about 5 times as much as the Milky Way. Yet, an elliptical galaxy is the more likely result. At present, the Milky Way and Andromeda approach each other at the same rate that a smaller galaxy, the large Magellanic Cloud, recedes from the Milky Way. So, aliens of the Milky Way and Andromeda face a future crisis if they don't reduce population over time. Some planets will die due to their closeness to the newly formed giant elliptical galaxy's hot center. Scientists say that in a large elliptical galaxy you could read a newspaper at night by the starlight. Other planets will be decimated by a violent hypernova when the 2 galaxies' central black holes merge. Some stars and planets will move out to a more gently habitable distance near the merged galaxy's central dust lane parameter. In short, there won't be as many livable planets at that time. So, residents of both galaxies must be careful to limit their numbers and make sure newly evolved populations do likewise. This is a critical consideration for all of the human future. Over billions of years, we will mix with other alien populations in search of common solutions. Of course, it's possible the newly merged galaxy will face a shortage of habitable planets during a 10 plus 100 million year crisis phase, after which terraforming would allow for alternatives. Nonetheless, verdant incursion upsets the apple cart in our vicinity, meaning Earth's vicinity. Verdants apparently failed to limit their population according to supercluster norms, and as a result, we, the populations of neighboring galaxy groups, now face the consequences. The verdant gray abduction and breeding program may be a threat to our independence and the galaxy's ecology. Ironically, verdants don't appear to be a case of unavoidable need. Instead, they seem to spread for reasons of power and control, to please themselves, and perpetuate a relatively elitist lifestyle. Meanwhile, they play to the crowd by saying they enforce a universal ecology and a ban on certain weapons in interstellar space. In reply, their critics say that a population of 500 trillion verdants is ecologically irresponsible, and that verdant intervention overly militarize some evolving worlds. You know, I have a question, just posing a question, because I've reflected upon this, but not very deeply. The controversy over or regarding overpopulation here on Earth. And, of course we're being told that the resources are getting, limited and so on and so forth. Well, we're being hit with all that. Now, is that real? Is that true? Are there too many people on the Mother Earth, on this planet Earth? I don't know. I'm just throwing this out. Is all this fear and stuff about, population, overpopulation, depopulation, we can't feed the world, but in fact we really could feed the world. We really could feed everybody. There should be no hungry people here. What is really going on with this population, overpopulation push here and the depopulation situation? And now I'm reading this piece here about the Verdants and their overpopulation. The 500 trillion is ecologically irresponsible. Have we reached that place too here on Earth? I'm just asking this. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out to everybody. Have we reached an ecologically irresponsible place on Earth as overpopulated? But we have, the foods that we are being manipulated. We know the air quality, the water, what we have here, this paradise, what was given to us as such a gift, an amazing, beautiful gift. This earth was paradise. It is still paradise, but it's being messed with, screwed up. And we know that's deliberate. And then we're being told that there's too many people here. And then you have the Georgia Guidestones. And who wrote the Georgia Guidestones anyway? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe some ETs planted that. Maybe it's the allies of humanity who are concerned about the overpopulation, just like they are saying they're concerned about the Verdants' overpopulation. How it's ecologically irresponsible, because, we're talking about a whole system here. We're talking about a collective connectedness to other people, whether we call them ETs or not, whether they look like us or not. Wherever they are, they're in this galaxy and they're in other galaxies, and we're all connected. So I'm just throwing out some questions here. Curious about this. Now, one alien of more advanced hyperversal origin offered further information on this subject. He, definitely a male, said that at present Verdant IFSP affiliates number equal to or less than 0% in the Andromeda galaxy, which is either less than or not much more than 1/10,000th of the total population there. Less than or equal could mean between 6 and 60 out of 600,000 populated planets, for example. Now, if this is true, the report, which was witnessed by numerous humans, by the way, means that our sister galaxy Andromeda has successfully limited Verdant incursion by informing emergent populations about the Verdant population problem. Given that we're due to merge with Andromeda, where we, meaning humans, are due to merge with Andromeda, the Milky Way is probably organized to limit Verdant colonization here also. Various Milky Way and other aliens reportedly suggest that such is the case, again, with a tone of urgency regarding our predicament here on Earth. The Verdant case is but one example of the risks involved in a sexual reproduction strategy. Although we humans have no choice in our reproductive strategy at present. But I'll tell you something, they're working on that. I'm just chiming in here a bit. They're working on that. Scientists are working on that. The mad scientists are working on it. We may opt for a mixed strategy in the future, partly cloned and partly sexual, in order to maintain physical stamina and a diverse gene pool, as some aliens advise. Aliens comment on the subject regularly. In a sense, religious beliefs about separating sexual urges from our ordinary thought faculties may have a universal basis. Aliens suggest that we should at least frame our thoughts in ways that are more socially distributed and non-sexual if we want to know what's going on in advanced communities around us. All right. The aliens are suggesting to us that we should at least frame our thoughts in a way that are more socially distributed and non-sexual if we want to know what's going on in advanced communities around us. And they don't mean here on Earth. One group of what might be called hardline hyperversal aliens, this includes the three ellipticals, subculture that sometimes resonates about a verdant role in limiting other population growth, argues that humans may have to be manipulated toward non-sexual alternatives. I don't like that word. Now, these are some hardline hyperversal aliens that are saying this. Okay. Their position suggests that there's a frustrated, large-scale effort to tend to the verdant problem and other challenges to an older, established ecology. Now, within the verdant hierarchy, the attitude is essentially holier than thou, although not religious, because verdants appear to have managed the gray population to make grays non-sexual and passively obedient. There is much chatter about this subject. Verdants sometimes boast of this accomplishment, as though they compensate for their own reproductive excess by compelling lesser aliens to humble themselves. Competing aliens suggest that verdants have exploited the grays ruthlessly. Meanwhile, verdants have argued that their intervention here on Earth is excusable because of a need to move humans toward non-sexual alternatives. In a larger sense, this suggests that verdants may point to our future Milky Way Andromeda merger as a potential risk to our neighbors. Verdants may try to gain positions in nearby galaxies via a technology trading scheme, and then promise to help protect them against our galaxy's incursions 3.5 billion years in the future. Other aliens say humans have plenty of time to consider various options in our crowded galaxy, given that we haven't yet mastered genetic engineering. Well, again, they're working on this, getting inroads here, making big inroads into genetic engineering. You don't hear about it. We don't hear about it, but it's there. And if you just do investigating, you will see they are really deep into genetic engineering. I should note that in the summer of 2005, one hyperversal alien said that planets in a large elliptical galaxy can be lush biological beauties because there's so much light there. Now, once a manageable order has been achieved in emerging elliptical, planets could evolve more greenly, and in some cases, excess light could be averted using electrogravity and magnetogravity, planet shielding. So, let's put all of this in a larger context. Michio Kaku's book, Hyperspace, discusses astronomer Nikolai Kardashev's grouping of civilizations as follows. A. Type 1 civilization controls the resources of an entire planet, meaning weather and earthquake control, plus exploration of an entire solar system. Type 2 civilization controls and directly uses the power of its sun and begins to colonize nearby star systems. And finally, Type 3 civilization controls and uses the power of an entire galaxy. Verdants, like other advanced megapopulations, verge on Type 3 status. But there's a fly in the ointment. Negative energy dynamics suggest that overuse of electrogravity by too many planets would slightly speed the clock on surrounding galaxies and deplete their energy lifetime. In the Verdant case, this poses a large-scale political problem. While routinely informing humans what was posed as a native Milky Way and hyper-advanced alien confluence explicitly demonstrated that they have a galaxy-wide system of towers on opposite sides of various planets. This was, by the way, remotely shown to humans in the context of a galaxy-wide collective security arrangement, along with a caution that Federation aliens might try to compete with or violate the system. Federation aliens. Exposition of the towers involved hyperversal aliens who attend to such communiques. Professionally trained human remote viewers in Jim Mars's book Alien Agenda first reported towers of the sort. Apparently, the purpose of such a system is to gain a wide spread of technological installations in order to manipulate alternate cycle energy for travel and communications and so forth. The system has been described as open to human integration in a galaxy-wide convention, presumably in order to avoid a strain on resources that would occur were there a redundancy of such systems. Other aliens' resonance about the 38 trillion megapopulation suggests that some native populations remain independent of it, yet nonetheless ascribe to a collective security convention integrating most of the galaxy's populations. For those who've read Dr. Edgar Rothschild Fuchs's reports about a U.S. black budget craft called the TR-3B, this is controlled, by the way, by a narco-dealing sub-regime in the U.S., a wide spread of electrogravity technology like that of the towers is a familiar theme. Now, this is a large, triangular-shaped TR-3B, reportedly uses a rapidly rotating torus of superconducting mercury plasma that circles the widest possible radius within this craft. And as it rotates, due to magnetic induction, the plasma is electromagnetically activated to move in a spiraling pattern. Now, this induces a negative energy gradient as it spirals, and it provides a lift for the TR-3B. It says that some plasmas are capable of nearly instantaneous energy transitions. Unlike the old, potentially dangerous antimatter reactor Bob Lazar says he studied after it was taken from a downed alien aircraft, the TR-3B avoids the element 115 reactor, presumably the antimatter explosion danger also. According to former Air Force careerist Charles Hall, an alien population called the Tall Whites was granted a small base at the southern tip of Nellis Air Force Range in Nevada and has helped the U.S. shadow regime develop nuclear-heated thrusters, which don't provide lift but move the TR-3B laterally at low altitudes. In 4 books on the subject, Hall meticulously details how, for years, he interacted at close range with these tall whites on the Nellis Range under the direction of 4-star Air Force general who reportedly allowed tall whites to kill U.S. airmen if they frightened tall whites by approaching them. Hall reports that when problems arose, the tall whites had a direct line to the general, this particular general in the Pentagon. If true, Hall's story about tall whites would be yet another example of how the United States shadow regime was compromised to allow the presence of what some indications suggest may be IFSP aliens. Tall whites look exactly like humans, but they're taller and thinner, with large wraparound eyes and pale white skin. Tall whites claim to be an anti-gray independent population that just happens to look like we do, an unlikely irony given what we know about biological diversity. The tall whites' arrogance mirrors the behavior of tall grays that human abductees have seen ordering the shorter grays around on alien spacecraft. For that reason, some analysts suspect that tall whites are affiliated with the gray alignment. The tall whites appear to have been engineered perhaps by the IFSP to be used for an alternative approach to the U.S. military-industrial complex. Neither the TR-3B nor the so-called TAW-50, a reportedly more advanced U.S. shadow regime craft, appears to be capable of nearly instantaneous alien-like travel to other stars. To tall white aliens who reportedly helped develop aspects of such craft, they are easily exceeded trinkets. The fact that a narco-funded U.S. cabal has control of such technology gives IFSP aliens an advantage here because the cabal is criminally compromised and can easily be manipulated. By conceding minor tech improvements to black budget insiders, tall whites may intend to foster dependency and intellectual laziness among humans in order to fortify entrenched criminal tendencies. But the question is, why? By assuring that elite human groups are corrupt and infiltrated via the breeding program, the gray alignment appears to be doing an Orwellian kind of prep work to be followed by manipulations that might alarm the human public. The plan appears to be to replace us with their hybrids. As Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, Ph.D., suggest, the abductor's intervention has been allowed to proceed far beyond what was originally surmised. However, don't expect an admission from the U.S. government in this regard. Pride and greed have gained the upper hand here for the moment. Like the Milky Way, megapopulations reported widespread between towers, the TR-3B is said to be more effective when its torus circles a wide radius, because greater radius allows it to control more gravity in the empty space across this radius. Now this implies that electrogravity and magnetogravity, lift, can be produced by essentially threading gravitic resonance across the empty space in the central radius of the torus. In other words, the larger the expanse of empty space across the torus's central radius, the finer and tighter is the pull or gradient of artificial gravity. Again, this links large-scale cosmic resonance to sub-quantum fluctuations. Why do I mention this? Because one of the Verdant's main intentions in expanding their colonial outposts may be to widen the spread of their electrogravity-magnetogravity installations, their own system of towers for energy purposes and more. This could pose a threat to other galaxies for two reasons. One, Verdants may try to use such advantage to thwart other galaxies' technology networks in the event of disagreements. And two, Verdants are apparently expanding into other galaxies in order to satisfy their overgrowth, high-energy lifestyle. Verdant energy needs may now exceed those described in Kardasheva's Type 3 category, causing Verdants to marginally tap into the gravitic energy cycle of surrounding galaxies. I've remotely probed, there we go again, remote viewing. I've remotely probed on board Verdance for their perspective on M83's neighbor galaxy, a spiral that nearly as big as M83, and have repeatedly noted a smug fixation on the fact that Verdance have affiliates and installations dotting part of that outer curvature. However, if I'm not mistaken, non-IFSP aliens comprise the larger part of this population. Now, probing of the sort relies on a mixed convergence of other aliens' awareness plus a non-local information quality that spools out, as the Verdants say, between all of the places to which Verdants and other aliens have traveled. Probing also relies on a prober's ability to gather information from unsuspecting Verdants. Now, this is all done in accordance with a universal transparency regarding cases of the sort. In short, Verdance may be our first example of a population that intrudes on other galaxies for energy and resources, and then intimidates populations who might criticize the way the Verdants speed the energy clock on other galaxies via the effect of magnetogravity. Verdant technology begins at least with magnetogravity and proceeds into further categories of cancelled out waveforms. Each category extends further out in terms of resonance, but must be finally counter-conditioned via use across a larger expanse. There is abundant evidence that Verdants try to stifle criticism of their activities. Kraft reports this, and I've also encountered it many times myself. But there's an ironic twist in such doings. As described below, when a Verdant attempts to stifle other IFSP aliens, the act can also impair the given Verdant. Worse yet, Verdant tendencies of the sort may jeopardize Verdant relations with more advanced hyperversal aliens, the consequences of which the Verdants don't fully realize at this relatively early time in their own evolution. During interactions with Verdants and their associates, humans sometimes note a marginally hypnotic immobilization of thought among wary Verdants. Stemming from what may originally have been a quiet sense of observation, we see that instead, Verdants who want to stifle criticism do so by telepathically manifesting repeated dogmatic message content. Such messages are subtly fractioned, yet are repeated in a marginally hypnotic way in order to silence others. Verdant technology and information predominance is posed heavy-handedly in order to humble other onboard aliens and condition the context in which criticism might arise. At times this reminds me of the pushiness of small-town squires. Ironically, a similar kind of thought control is done by older, more hardened Verdants who, after years of mind-numbing routines, need to obscure the ugly character of their work in order to convince female Verdants of their sexual compatibility. It's a kind of gratification through intellectual stultification, and it raises questions about corrupt use of psychotronic technology toward such ends. Verdant thought control of this sort may partly stem from the Verdant government's sense of right and wrong, its policies, and may touch on considerations that arise in psychotronic thought monitoring, plus psychotronic methods that are used to stifle bad thoughts in criminal offenders. The following may sound weird, but I've observed it many times in testy interactions with Verdants. A Verdant will converge and cancel out certain brain frequencies in order to effectively freeze the commingled energies of a psychotronic conversation with another alien or even a human, inadvertently freezing his or her own thought and sentience in order to project fractioned message content. This is like doping another person in order to influence him or her, and is supposed to be subtle, but it really isn't. As a result, normally scientific verdants make basic avoidable mistakes. They fail to distinguish between the observer, the verdant individual, and the more universal terms of the observation. Instead, what happens is a fractioned jumble of internal messages that distorts the manipulator's ability for clear, dispassionate observation. You take that coupled with a freeze on sentience, plus a desiccation of emotion that occurs in long-lived verdants, the result can be both ugly and prejudicial. In the worst cases, such conditioning can affect the reasoning of more than one observing verdant. It becomes a groupthink phenomenon that can lead to coldly impersonal bullying and stifled, if not mousy, conformity. Now, under such circumstances, seemingly tangential psychological distortions can aggravate the given verdant's intellectual disconnect, causing a self-hypnotic stilling of more complex considerations. Unresolved emotional conflicts tend to surface at such times. This can manifest as negatively cycled insecurity or bias resonating both among and between like-minded verdants, which is a potential barrier to clear-headed analysis. Such moments underscore non-IFSP aliens' warnings that the social psychology of some aliens hasn't necessarily paralleled their technological advancements. In order to prevent a victim's discovery of verdant mind manipulation of the sort, a verdant or affiliated alien may try to distort the circumstance by introducing aggravated distractions to throw the victim off. Now, I've encountered this many times, and it can be very annoying. Some humans are easily duped this way because psychotronically recorded samples of the victim's past thoughts can be replayed to confuse the human, however jarring and out of place such thoughts may seem at the moment. This type of behavior is but one kind of diversion intended to frustrate a target people's ability to defend themselves against an alien intervention and resource scam. And I have to read this again. This is very key. And I have encountered this too. This author says, I've encountered this many times and it can be most annoying. Well, it's more than annoying. It's deliberately distracting and confusing. Some humans are easily duped this way because psychotronically recorded samples of the person's past thoughts, meaning ours, those listeners, can be replayed to confuse them. However jarring and out of place such thoughts may seem at the moment that you're in, it could be something from the past, psychotronically recorded samples of the victim's past thoughts. I'd say past experiences coming to you. This type of behavior is but one kind of diversion intended to frustrate. I'm going to say yes, frustrate, but also definitely divert. It's a intended diversion upon a target people's ability to defend themselves against an alien intervention and a resource scam. So, I don't know if you remember, I may have talked about this, or I was going to talk about it, but I may have, about the things that people are hearing in their minds, the thoughts that are coming through. Bizarre, weird, strange, creepy thoughts, even thoughts of the past, like revisiting past stuff that is ages gone, coming into your mind over and over and over again. This is what this is like, what he's talking about here. It's diversion, and is intended to frustrate and to confuse our ability to defend ourselves against an alien intervention mind control, alien intervention, and of course resource scam. Well, here on planet Earth, a resource, and we are resources as well, but it's about, I guess you'd say it's about activating the monkey mind that we have anyway, but it's feeding us as a diversion thoughts, okay, that are out of place in the moment. Such doings are rationalized as being practical. After all, the Verdants are pressured to maintain conformity within their empire so that it functions to their advantage. Other corrupt aliens use the same tactic, which will surely disappoint humans, who want to think that advanced aliens would never do such a thing. Here's a relevant quote reportedly by a non-IFSP alien critical of such conformity. And such collectives have religious components. Yet we have found, with very few exceptions, that collectives consider their own survival and their own structure to be the sole focus for their devotion. Now, their devotion is almost religious in nature, even though their organizations rarely are religion. In other words, an offending collective's marginally political oneness of mind can be narrow and domineering, inflexible, if not mechanistic. And more about this later. Readers should remember that a typical alien economy is more equally shared or collectivized than that of Earth. Some aliens don't use money. One population, the Haven aliens, for instance, use their energy credits instead. Greys and other IFSP minority aliens sometimes resonate that Verdants do in fact try to muffle Grey's criticisms in telepathic community interactions. Well, the media and telepathic mind control is certainly prevalent. Part of the problem is Verdant presumption of superiority and Verdant desire for strict hierarchical control. Part of the problem is due to Verdant's sexually conditioned assumptions as contrasted with those of non-sexual aliens. In interactions with humans, care must be taken to preserve the anonymity of conscientiously resonating IFSP aliens, given the Verdant disposition. So protect your sources, should you develop any. They're part of a larger web of interactions that outside populations must sometimes work to keep alive and active. Females, dissidents who are hard to find outwardly, non-Verdants, and non-sexuals within the IFSP seem to be the best hope for future reforms. When a population like the Verdants has outgrown its old self-boosting propaganda about the need for expansion, yet continues to churn out such propaganda rather than reduce population, recital of such dogma becomes a kind of plastic art in a sense, even cultish. When outright lies become the official party line, corrupt subcultures go unchallenged. The Verdants say they don't directly intervene in the affairs of a planet like Earth, which appears to be a lie. Some Verdants skilled at deception and promote in the IFSP's colonial resource sections, while those who would challenge such behaviors can be excluded from decision-making. The worst part of this Verdant expansion strategy concerns corruptions. Imagine, for example, the Verdant past, replete with Roman-like cruelties and death squads in the earliest years, and then suppression of individual rights as their empire expanded. Phases of reform might be followed by nightmarish campaigns of oppression. In other words, Big Brother abuses of psychotronic technology and a vengeful desire to silence or sabotage those who would challenge the many genocides and terroricides manipulated by the IFSP to accomplish its subjugations. This is very familiar. Verdants admit to having precipitated the ruin of entire planets deliberately. Such doings do not make for gentle, open-minded democracy. Instead, they would lead to further oppression, causing some Verdants to indulge their sexual fantasies while subtly cultivating extremes of cruelty and corruption on a target planet so that no one on the target planet can ever say, "Look at those Verdants, they're worse than we are." Worse yet, by scheming ecological sabotage in order to gain control over target planets. Yes, Verdants can dominate a trade in biological material, and they can tout their biologically lush home planet. Verdant as a rare paradise in contrast to failures like the Greys. To be safe, humans should watch for Verdant attempts to corrupt and sabotage humans on an epic scale and then pretend to save us. Remember this, please, folks listening. Humans should watch for Verdant attempts to corrupt and sabotage humans on an epic scale and then pretend to save us. One Verdant told Kraft that was the scheme of some past interventions, probably featuring Verdants who suffered a kind of Munchausen syndrome like that of healthcare workers who poison or injure patients in order to feel important during a crisis. I've witnessed some Verdants behaving in such a manner here on planet during their present intervention. They are fallible, they are prone to age-related psychological conditions that humans are only beginning to understand. Ultimately, due to bureaucratic pressures and the vagaries of empire, Verdants may try to steer human globalization toward a criminal empire of infiltrated elites and then drive the demon toward an ecological brink. The question is whether Verdants do seismic sabotage directly. Okay, due to bureaucratic pressures and the vagaries of empire, Verdants, well, they're saying Verdants, but let's just think of the elite, may try to steer human globalization toward a criminal empire of infiltrated elites. There you go. And then drive the demon toward an ecological brink. Okay. Well, everybody, I'm finding this very fascinating. I hope you are too. And I'm going to end here today. And I'll continue next Friday. And to be safe. Be safe. And many blessings to you all. And stay tuned. Good programs coming up. And thank you, Colleen, so much for Haggy Shack Radio and Wolf Spirit Radio. And to all you listeners, I'll see you next week. Take care.
Welcome to It's Your Life, Just Get It Done Now, with hosts Joyce Wheeler and Krista Nelson, who will empower you to live a happy, healthy, natural life.